The Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus came out in the March of 2018 and aimed to perfect the very popular design brought by the S8. The S9 brought more durability, very slightly thinner bezels, and most significantly, a better placed fingerprint sensor. While these might seem like minor improvements alone, package them all together along with the array of typical smartphone upgrades, and you have an enticing option in the S9, at least in 2018. But that was 3 years ago. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. How do they hold up in 2021, and could they even still be worth buying? First off, of course, if you have a Galaxy S9 right now, you're good to go. You shouldn't need to upgrade to the newer model yet. The phone is approaching 3 years old, but the hardware is still stellar, and assuming you're not having any issues, the phone feels premium and of flagship quality. And hey, it has a headphone jack, something the newest Samsung phones are no longer packing. If you're considering buying the Galaxy S9 right now, that's where things get considerably more tricky. Buying brand new, you might find the S9 for probably very little dollars upfront from various carriers around you, but then you're likely locking yourself into a 2-year contract, and I'd say that isn't ideal due to the lack of software support, which I'll get to. On eBay, however, the Galaxy S9 is shockingly cheap, often under $200, and not much more for the Plus version, which is the one I'd recommend generally for the upgraded camera and bigger battery. So is the S9 worth buying used? Yeah, I think it is. Brand new? Probably not, if you can even find it brand new anymore, unless of course you're getting a heck of a deal. The biggest issue of the S9 is the same with any Samsung phone ever. A disappointing measly 2 years of software support. That's right, the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus, despite still having very capable hardware, are forever stuck on Android 10 with One UI 2.5. No more major software updates or features ever. Samsung has recently started guaranteeing software support for 3 years instead of 2 with their phones, which is awesome. But of course, this starts with the Galaxy S10 and newer, leaving S9 users out to dry. It's very pathetic how little Samsung bothers to care about their existing user base, and while sure, the new updates really aren't adding very much to the experience, not even having the choice to get them is absolutely ridiculous. Samsung's not necessarily unique here, it's an issue with many Android makers, but they're one of the worst, especially considering the S9 Plus was like $1,000 phone only 3 years ago. Maybe not quite that much, but you get the idea. Regardless, the software it currently has is decent enough, it runs well, and it'll be able to download basically any app for the foreseeable future. It's definitely usable, just don't expect any new features ever, although there should be at least more security updates for a while, and of course there's always the backdoor methods of installing newer versions of Android with ROMs and rooting, but I'll leave that to you to investigate if you're interested. Software is a sore spot for the Galaxy S9, but the hardware, oh the hardware, it's amazing, and it by no means feels its age. It's not the fastest phone in the world, but just looking at it, would you really think it's 3 years old? Okay, maybe you would given the bezels, but I don't know, I think it looks extremely sleek and classy. This is actually one of my favorite Android designs of all time, so let's talk about the design. The Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus have a glass front and glossy glass back with an aluminum frame, giving it a premium look and feel while also still being decently lightweight and comfortable to hold. The back being glass allows for wireless charging of course, but it is flawed in that it shows fingerprints very easily and also will crack if you drop it from the wrong angle and height. You definitely are going to want to consider using a case with this phone. From the back, the S9 and the S9 Plus look nearly identical with a couple differences. The major one is the second telephoto camera lens on the Plus that allows you to get 2x zoom with little to no loss in quality. Both phones do have the main sensor that features dual apertures, and we'll get to what that means a little bit later. The fingerprint sensor is now below the camera, unlike the Galaxy S8, which for some reason put it beside the camera. This resulted in a lot of missed touches. I know I sure hated using it on the S8, and the S9 fixed it by putting it in an easier to reach position that also feels more obvious to the touch. It's natural to put your finger under the camera, not beside it. There's also iris scanning tech in this phone, which I've never been a fan of, but it's worth mentioning as it was removed with the next year's Galaxy S10. Naturally, we have a bigger battery with the S9 Plus being sized at 3,500 mAh compared to the 3,000 mAh in its smaller counterpart. You'll get better battery life with the Plus by a decent margin, and while both phones should last you the day, if they've been used over the years, that can vary. If you're buying used, beware, smartphone batteries do degrade over time, and it might not perform as well as you would hope. The last noteworthy difference between the small S9 and the S9 Plus is the amount of RAM. The S9 has 4 GB, the S9 Plus has 6 GB. In terms of real-life performance, there's not going to be too much of a difference day to day, but it does mean the S9 Plus should be a little bit faster and better at keeping apps open in the background for longer, just something to keep in mind. But the highlight of both models is the display, the gorgeous, brilliant, large display. This has always been the top feature of Samsung phones, and the S9 is no exception. It's absolutely beautiful even 3 years later. With the Galaxy S9, we get a size of 5.8 inches with a crazy pixel density of 570 pixels per inch, making for a resolution of 1440 by 2960. The S9 Plus has the same resolution at a size of 6.2 inches, which makes for a slightly lower pixel density of 529 pixels per inch, a difference so minimal on an already ridiculous display that you'd never notice it either way. But yes, the smaller S9 technically will be a bit sharper. But either way, the screens are bright, vibrant, colorful, and of course Super AMOLED, which means true blacks and a very, very vivid image. Also, by default, the S9 does come with only full HD being selected, something that's always kind of annoyed me. How many people out there don't even know this is an option? Of course, the reason why Samsung does this does make sense. Using the best possible resolution means the battery will drain faster, and for the average person, the slightly lower but still very solid 1080p is going to be worth it for more screen on time. One thing kind of annoying and almost amusing is another little Samsung quirk, as the phone will actively bug you for trying to raise the brightness too high. This is mainly because of battery drain, although you could also say that it has to do with the higher brightness potentially causing the phone to be more prone to screen burn-in. Burn-in is something that all OLEDs suffer from iPhones to Samsungs to Pixels to you name it. They've gotten better over the years, but it's still an issue. My S9 Plus here, which used to be my aunt's and was her daily driver for a couple years, does have some burn-in. On a plain white screen, you can see the faint outline of the keyboard and navigation bar on the bottom. My guess is that while texting or something, she would just leave the phone on for extended periods of time or something to that extent. It was all accidental, obviously, and I wasn't annoyed by it when I bought it from her. She never even noticed it. I'm just using the phone for review purposes, but it is something to watch out for if you're gonna buy an S9 used. And it's funny, all this talk about the display, and I haven't even mentioned what gives the S9 its unique look. The curved screen, which curves to the extent that there is little to no side bezel visible when you're looking at the phone straight on. It results in an extremely immersive experience, especially when gaming or watching a movie or just using the phone really. It's something that I absolutely love to look at, although, and this might not be popular among Samsung fans, in practice, I don't like it. I find when holding the phone, it can cause accidental touches, which I can find quite annoying, and there's also often reflections on the edges of the display, which can be a bit of a distraction. I'm sure I would get used to it if the phone was my daily driver, but I thought it was at least worth mentioning, and if you were to use a case, that would solve the accidental touch issue. All in all though, the screen is just so good, and it's hard to believe it's 3 years old. It feels like a screen from a flagship, and the age is not a concern in this department whatsoever. One place where the age is felt to a less mild extent is the camera systems. It's good, just not great. The main sensor, as seen on the S9 and S9 Plus, is 12 megapixels and captures okay photos. It's a decently sharp picture with accurate coloring and fine HDR. It just doesn't quite have that pop or almost perfection of the newest cameras we've seen in recent years. It suffers in low light conditions, but that's where the dual aperture comes in. You have two f-stop modes, f1.5 and f2.4, and don't worry if you don't know what that means. Basically, the phone will automatically shift between them depending on the surrounding lighting. If you're in a dimmer lit room or taking photos at night, the lens will go to the wider f1.5 to allow more light to be captured by the camera. Does it make much of a difference to the average person? Not really. You probably won't even notice it, but it is still cool. Starting with the S20, you don't have dual aperture anymore, so clearly it wasn't the biggest deal ever, but still, it's neat. Pictures are good, they're just not great. That's really the big thing. And of course, we do have the telephoto camera lens on the S9 Plus here. This again allows for 2x zoom, and it works exactly how you would expect. And ultimately, this does feel like a 2018 smartphone camera. The selfie camera is fine at 8 megapixels, and for Instagram or Zoom or whatever you desire, it'll more than do the job. So all in all, the S9 camera, the photos aren't going to have that wow factor on newer and better phones, as well as the consistently great photos something like the iPhone 12 or Google Pixel 5 can take. But it more than does the job, and I have no real complaints to make here. And hey, you can also put in a micro SD card, which means cheap extra storage for more apps or photos or whatever. Let's talk about technical specifications. Here, I do have a few complaints to make. I've already mentioned the 4 gigs of RAM in the S9 and 6 gigs in the S9 Plus, but then there's also the Snapdragon 845 chipset, which was top of the line in 2018 and still provides a pretty smooth experience in most circumstances. And then of course there's also the Exynos 9810 chipset, which the S9 actually has in most countries out there. If you're not from North America, China, Japan, or Latin America, that's likely what you'll be looking at. Performance isn't quite as good as the Snapdragon 845, but it's not much worse, and I doubt you'll notice too much real life difference. Running Running Android 10, the Galaxy S9 performs like a champ, able to navigate through the UI with ease and running any app or game your heart could desire. And while I do hate not having the newest version of software, at the moment it's doing just fine. Of course though, keep in mind this phone is never, ever getting any major software updates. What you see here is what you get. I'm not a big fan of One UI, which is Samsung's skin on top of Android, and then there's the typical bloat you get with Samsung phones, just a lot of kind of useless apps as well as double versions of most apps. So you get like an email app from Google and from Samsung, or you get a browser from Google and from Samsung, etc. But overall, the experience has gotten better over the years with One UI, and it does come down to personal preference more than anything. Some people do like this skin, but yeah, I do really wish it would run Android 11. This phone can totally handle it, and the fact that it's no longer supported, it's just absurd. It really is. Samsung, what are you doing? I'm glad Samsung's starting to change this, but I don't see why they couldn't have started to change with the S9 or even the S8. The S8 could have ran Android 10, but no, it was stuck on Android 9. Does the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus hold up in 2021? Absolutely, and I'm sure you didn't really expect much different. It might be 3 years old, but it doesn't feel like it, and while the camera, battery life, and software does leave some to be desired, the display and overall hardware and build is just as great and premium as ever. This is a very nice phone, and I have no doubt if you were to pick one up, you'd be more than happy with it. And if you have one right now and maybe are unsure of whether or not to upgrade, of course it's up to you, but if you're not having any significant issues such as a poor battery and don't really mind being slightly behind in Android support, then I think you can easily squeeze some more life out of your Galaxy S9 or S9 Plus. But what do you think? Any of you have a Galaxy S9 or S9 Plus? How's it working for you? Let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting or helpful, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.